Welcome to Game Day Preview. I'm Bob McElligott along with Blue Jackets assistant coach Dan Hinote. The Blue Jackets back at home at Nationwide Arena to take on the Chicago Blackhawks tonight. Dan, just coming off a trip where you lost in Phoenix, lost in Colorado. One of the biggest disappointments, I'm sure, is not just the losses, but the lack of offense. You scored only one goal in those two games. What have you addressed with the team to try to get a little bit more goal production here tonight?
Well, I think it's zone time, and in reality, that goes to do with your dumps, goes to do with your puck possession in the breakout, neutral zone. We were spreading ourselves too thin, too far away from each other, and when you do that, you just don't have any support all over the ice. We tried to fix it a little bit in Colorado. We did a better job with it, which led to more zone time. It's still not enough goals, obviously, but I think going forward, if we can stay together as a group, get pucks deep and start working behind the other team's net on a regular basis, we'll have more production.
It seemed like, even though Semyon Varlamov had a good game, I don't want to take away from him in Colorado the other night, a lot of those shots in that game, especially in the third period, were very tight shots, and there weren't a lot of second and third opportunities. How important is it going to be to kind of tip the scales in those areas tonight?
Well, and for us, it's a good factor in how hard we're playing. If you're not getting second chances, then your team's just not doing enough work in the dirty areas, and that's what we've seen. You know, we got guys that are willing to fight, put their bodies on the line, but for the most part right now, we're just not getting those secondary, third, fourth whacks at pucks where you have to take a cross check, a high stick, and sometimes, you know, an elbow to get, and we're not doing that yet, but it's something that I know the guys have talked about in the dressing room. I know us as coaches have talked about it, and it's obviously an area that we have to address.
In the Chicago Blackhawks team that you go up against tonight, last year especially, there were a lot of questions about them. Why aren't they playing better? What do they need to do? And a lot of it really stemmed from their goaltending. And Corey Crawford struggled at times. And so with that being said, they've done very well this year. But knowing that you have a goaltender that's had those little bit of fits in the past, how much more important is it to get as many pucks as possible on him tonight?
Yeah, you know, among the goalies in the NHL, he's probably one of the more unproven ones, you know, but he's done a great job for them. He's a good goaltender, and like any NHL goalie, if you don't get bodies, you don't get a ton of secondary chances, you're not going to score goals, and we know that. And you know, they're firing on all cylinders right now. Their big boys are scoring goals and getting points, and they're playing a high-tempo game. So we're going to have to do the same and then create some havoc in front of their net.
And now we've talked about, obviously, the offense that you've got to get. What about the defense that you do have to play as a team? Because of what you just talked about, the high-power offensive players that they have on this team, and that you don't want them getting those stretch passes and those long breakouts out of their own zone. Yeah,
Chicago's one of those teams, if you fall asleep, even for a second, they're behind you. And the breakaways, we saw a clip just the other day of a 3-on-0, which is almost impossible in hockey, but they pulled it off. So, you know, they're a team that they're opportunistic. They see a bouncing puck, they see a turnover, they're jumping to go the other way. And if you're not on your toes, and this means the entire game, they will find a way. And so that's something that our players know. Obviously, as coaches, we've addressed it. But it still doesn't make it any easier. You know, in the second period, the long change, they're just waiting for you to take one lazy step and they're gone the other way. So we're going to have to be on our toes for a full 60 minutes.
Can you take anything away from the first two games of the year at Nashville, a place that this team has struggled in the past, went in, pulled out a victory in a shootout? Detroit comes in here last Monday, big game, division rival, and you lose in the shootout and you get a point. What I'm saying is you go to Phoenix and Colorado, maybe you lose a little bit of that because of those two teams, but here you go with a big rival, a team that expects to do very well, back in your own building with a full house tonight.
Yeah, it's going to be great in here because, like you said, it's going to be a full house. We'll have the home ice advantage. The crowd will be crazy. And that hopefully something we can feed off of because we need the energy. Our starts haven't been great this year, and you know, for whatever reason, but you know, when you're coming home and you're going to have a buzzed atmosphere, that it should help us in that regard. But you can't afford to take games off against a team like Phoenix and Colorado either, just because they're not your rival. But when you do have this added incentive, it does help.
Joel Quenneville is the head coach of the Chicago Blackhawks. You actually played for him with the Colorado Avalanche. I guess I just want to ask you, does he still talk to you?
You know, he still talks to me like I'm one of his players, yells at me a few times. But, you know, Coach Q, he came into Colorado and he was very serious, and you kind of knew he had a big presence when he walked in the room. We called him the Iceman because of it. And then his assistant, Kitchen, was my head coach in St. Louis, and he was another guy you had to be on your toes because you'd just be skating around in the morning skate and he'd come and just level you and you'd go flying in the corner. So both great guys, both great coaches.
In your coaching philosophy now, have you taken anything from either one of those guys?
Oh, absolutely. There's a lot of little philosophies that you take from I think, you know, just what I talked about with Mike Kitchen as a head coach. interacting with the players along that line, I think, is very effective. I know it worked for me when I was his player. And then Quenneville, the way he went about his daily business, he was very serious and thorough, and attention to detail. And when you knew you were on the ice, you knew what to expect, and you knew what was expected of you. So it made it easier as a player. So I kind of take a little bit of that from each of them.
Blue Jackets, Blackhawks tonight. Puck drops at 7 o'clock here at Nationwide Arena. You can watch the game on Fox Sports Ohio or listen to it on the Blue Jackets Radio Network. For Blue Jackets assistant coach Dan Hinote, I'm Bob McElligott. Thanks for watching Game Day Preview on Jackets TV, presented by Ohio Health.